All right, people, I'm going to assume that most of you are here for our little presentation this afternoon, and we'll get started. I'd like to welcome you to Art, Letters, and Song, and I'm thrilled to see such a nice crowd. And you're in for a treat. This concept of art inspiring words and music, it's not new. It's as old as time, as a matter of fact. Examples go back, to Monteverdi and Mozart. And I guess the most familiar one would be Pictures at an Exhibition by Mussorgsky. And then with words, we have Auden was influenced by Bruegel. I think it was Starry, Starry Night by... Anne Sexton. There you go. Anne Sexton. Very good, very good. You can come up here now and take the card. Okay. So that's the history, a little bit of history here and there. But now it's almost time to raise the curtain and start our own show. I was back there a minute ago trying to find a yoga teacher to remind me how to breathe. So before we start, I keep referring to this as a show, which would mean that we would have to have a script and actors, musicians, a director. We don't have any of that. These writers were set loose on 3 paintings, and they were given no rules, no direction. They were asked not to submit the work for approval because I thought as soon as I got a red pen in my hand and started editing, they'd all sound like me. So the goal was total spontaneity. The singers, too, are leaving us in the dark because every one of these kids has stage experience, but they have never sung together as a group. So we're going to begin with Jane Anderson's painting, Clem and Rachel. And this entire audience, the cast, the kids behind the bar, everybody will be hearing this for the first time. I don't know whether that's inspired or insane, but that's... So, curtain up. Frank Hopkins, where are you?
Right here.
Frank, read for us.
Well, in keeping with the disorganized nature, I'm going to start reading. This picture looks a lot better here than it does on the internet, and I'm glad I wrote what I did. Can everybody hear me out there? Yes. When I first looked at the picture, Clem and Rachel, my eyes riveted on their smiles. While not as mysterious as Mona Lisa's, they revealed their relationship. They enjoyed each other. I don't know whether they had reminisced about a happy event in their past life together, talked about plans for the future, or they had recently finished making love as they had done thousands of times before and would continue into the future, confident in the knowledge they both knew how to make each other happy. Their sparkling eyes caught my attention next. It appears to me that while Clem's head faced into the distance, his eyes tried to glance at the woman he loved. Rachel's content look on her face told me she knew and appreciated his affection. Their faces showed their ages to be in their 50s or 60s, although they didn't reveal the length of their relationship, just its happiness. I knew from looking at Rachel's house dress in Clem's blue jacket, shirt, and jeans, they were not professional, upper-class visitors from Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, or New York, but an Eastern Shore working-class couple. The worn paint on the siding behind them suggested they had a hard life working on a farm with not enough time to properly maintain their home's exterior. Because they didn't have time left over after tilling the crops, tending their herds, raising their chickens and children, and caring for each other. I noticed the dogs last. Their relaxed posture on their owners' laps told me they agreed with my valuation of Clem's and Rachel's life together expressed in the picture.
Well, I've got nothing to worry about. I don't have to do anything now. That's wonderful, Frank. It was just lovely. Who's next? Wait, look at my cheat sheet here. Okay, Barbara Reisert will read next on this painting. Barbara?
You know, I get everybody's butt in my face.
You got everybody's butt in your face.
It's a very active.
I know, it's very active.
Excuse my butt.
It's all right.
Oh. Okay, I have taken literary license here, and I have changed the names of the folks in the picture. And I've also put it out as a first page from the Baltimore Post from July 1st of this year. And the underlining word here is, "This unlikely looking couple arrested for grand theft." The byline is Baltimore, Maryland. Following their latest heist at McMahon grocery store, Bonnie and Clyde, yes, that's their names, were apprehended at their home on Pratt Street in our fair city. The Joneses were taken into custody after returning home from their most recent heist to feed the dogs. This mother and son team of grifters has been working the area for quite some time. The Baltimore Police Department has a 12-page rap sheet on these folks. Bonnie, who is 53, a reportedly soft-spoken woman, works at the local bakery and is a member of All Saints Church Choir. While her son Clyde, who is 32, following his discharge from the Army, has worked as custodian at All Saints Church. He's been selling the dogs he raises, and 23 of the little fellows and gals were found in the house and taken to the Humane Society. Aaron Jones, Bonnie's husband and Clyde's father, has not been seen or heard from in several years. And the Post learned that the dirt floor of the pair's row home is being excavated. If you share any information regarding this case, please call Inspector Clouseau.
I asked Jane Anderson earlier if these people were still living, and she said, no, sadly they weren't. I think they're probably happy they're not. Okay, Barbara. John Ford, you're up next.
Some days I look at the painting and it seems so very long ago. Other days, not so long at all. Always, though, it is the past. I don't forget it is from a gone time. She walked up the lane mid-afternoon Sunday, a real nice late spring afternoon. We'd been to church and finished what work we thought was proper for a Sunday. In another hour, I'd step inside to the kitchen and begin our Sunday supper. It was that day of the week, that time of that day, when it felt right to rest, when we were quiet inside ourselves and pleased with what was done and what was ahead of us. She said she wanted a picture of us for a painting she had in her head. We offered her tea, but she just got her camera out and asked again. Afterwards, she thanked us and said if it worked out, we'd get a print from her. We never saw her again, but got a nice note when the print came in the mail a couple of months later. She made the painting, but she isn't part of it when I look at it. I think of that afternoon. I think of my mother and the brooch she gave me, which I was wearing then and am wearing this very day. I remember the dogs, who were a comfort to us and sometimes good company, and who never heard a cross word from either of us. I remember how nice it was sitting on that porch on a Sunday afternoon when the weather allowed, how quiet it was. And I remember the children were gone from the house then, 3 married and moved out, and 1 gone forever. But mostly, I think about Clem. She gave him blue eyes. They match his coat and hat band, but his eyes were gray and as quiet as that afternoon. I remember his rough worked hands that always remembered me, his words, and his faith in what we were. Gone now, but that is the way of things. If I ever meet her again, I will tell her that I like the painting.
That was beautiful. No wonder you got elected. Okay. Lost my place there. I was going to memorize these. I can't remember anything anymore. Curtain up, Frank Hopkins. Okay. Oh, here we are. Let's ask Jane Anderson, the artist, to shed some light on Clem and Rachel. If it's comfortable for you.
But she's got a boot. Are you all right?
No, I'm okay. I'm okay. It's just bad tendonitis.
If you need to pull this down.
So this is Clem and Rachel, and they are my grandparents. I had a tiny, old, grayed out photograph about this big of them sitting on this old porch. And they were just kind of salt of the earth people and lived on a small farm on just over the border in Indiana, just over the Ohio border. This picture was taken in the, I guess, it was taken in the 30s because after they stopped farming their truck farm, Clem came in on Roosevelt's coattails and became a sheriff in Union County, Indiana. And they maintained their farm until he quit sheriffing and living above the jail, when my mom had great stories about that. I still remember my grandmother telling me they had a prisoner who refused to eat and finally squeezed out through the food slot in the jail. But they were great people. They had 5 kids, and they had these little Manchester Terrier dogs that I thought when I did the painting and really looked at the photograph, the dogs are really looking at each other and interacting. And Clem and Rachel were looking at, out, and yet we're all part of it. So I felt like the dogs had kind of connected to the people and were their alter egos. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, we'll now hear the premiere performance of our a cappella this ensemble. I'm laughing because they've named themselves the Yacht Club Dropouts. And their director, Ray Ramesh, would just say 1 or 2 words about the group, and then they're going to sing for us.
Yep. Hey guys, so we're gonna get situated. It's some pretty tight feng shui up on stage today. But yeah, can everyone scoot back? That'd be great. So anyway, we're the Yacht Club Dropouts. We're all involved in various musical projects in the area and hang out sometimes too. So we just got together to sing a little bit because we all love singing a cappella. I'd like to thank Mary for inviting us, and for Brian and Helen and Joanne and the great operation they have going on in here. They really put their money where their mouth is and support the arts around here, and I think that's worth acknowledging. Okay, we're gonna sing something. This tune, well, I'll let you decide if this is in regards to the sentiment between the 2 folks on the in the chairs or the folks to their dogs. It could go either way. All right, we can...
I may not always love you, but as long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about God only knows what I'd be without you. Do 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 do. God only knows what I'd be without you. Oh, I may not always love you, but long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you. Without you. Without you.
To record it, so, yeah.
Okay, everybody settle down. We're ready to move it along here. Now, Judy Hedges and her friend Aloysius are going to give their impressions of Joanne Herman's painting, Friends. Judy, Aloysius, do you want to come up now? I will get out of your way.
Suspend disbelief. Better yet, believe. I'm entering the picture. Here, through the frame, you come too. Blink. It is summer, 1943, and we are in the nursery at Nani's house. Marjorie has come to live here because her daddy went away to fly airplanes, and her mommy got sad. Nani takes a lot of naps, so mostly this troop is on their own in the high and away up all the stairs room. It has long been the realm of Aloysius, the wise worn bear, and Abigail, the vintage doll. Vesper the cat follows his little girl, a sewn-tight shadow. At this tea party, the kitty has a saucer of cream, while the others partake of pudding. They tell each other everything and promise, we will never, ever grow up. Spoons down, they bundle themselves onto the attic window seat that shows their whole world, and Aloysius begins their daily grace. Thanks for buttercups, bright in the meadow below, and dragonflies that dip and dart, adds Vesper. Oh, the big bullfrogs that say harumph, giggles Abigail, while Marjorie mentions the red wagon for rides when pulled by Collie Aberdeen. Aloysius says, we can wish on wisteria that climbs up the wall, but Vesper purrs about their satin cushion right there in the sunbeam. Can you hear all this, people? Be calm and quiet just a little while longer. Their voices echo. We have Dobbin, our rocking horse, to take us wherever we want. And tomorrow can be just like today. The sun shines, the attic is warm. Do have another spot of tea, 1 lump or 3. Aloysius, sing us that song about the teddy bear's picnic. Let's do poo sticks when we get back to the bridge. Once upon a time, where is the Pacific Ocean? How soon will it be Christmas? Tomorrow can be just like today. Your paw is in my pudding. Is Nani older than Kris Kringle? Could I still skip if I carried a cane? Friends forever. Silly Vesper, there's cream on your whiskers. Maybe magic fireflies when evening comes. A hug for my pretty kitty, and always, always Abigail. I'm not afraid, because there's Mr. Roosevelt, and you, Aloysius, my furry old bear. Happily ever after. Such a nice party. Stay. Please, never grow up and go away. Will tomorrow be just like today?
You might wonder, Judy's calling this dog a cat. It's my fault. I'm very, very bad with a computer, and I had to forward the paintings, the pictures of the paintings, to the writers so they could write about them. And the biggest thing I could get was a postage stamp, and they were all working with these postage stamps trying to interpret a painting. So it's my fault. We thought it was a cat. Let's see, John Miller, maybe he'll do a little bit better than I did. John? Okay.
4th of July, summer's over, blankets out, storm windows in, inventory losses of children and their children and what they've left behind. Declination of the sun, desperate weeds, smell of burnt leaves, the great winding down. All things present and accounted for. Tika, she went home. Pink baby, ditto. Ken, lost at Target long ago. Shushi, given to Tita to cure her cancer. Cubby Bear, slumped in his chair for crumpets and tea, stares eyeless at his hostess and her baby doll, ice cream sundae in between. His button eyes dangling on ganglion threads of optic nerve, loved and cuddled, confidant in sorrow, consoler of tears, confessor, intercessor, absolver of peccadillos, known and unknown. Put away somewhere, lost, found in a steamer trunk in an attic storage room, redolent of mothballs and mildew. Honey brown hair, once luxuriant, now love-worn to warp and woof. Epidermis, time-washed to skein of membrane, as thin as paper. Married, 2 children, 3 grandchildren I, gifted away to each child in turn, loved and cuddled, but always returned to sender. Cubby Bear belongs with you. I call for you. There's no answer. Things I must leave behind. Echoes remind, summer's over. 4th of July, summer's over, blankets out, storm windows in, inventory of losses of children and their children and what they've left behind. Declination of the sun, desperate weeds, smell of burnt leaves, the great winding down.
That was beautiful, John. Thank you. Caroline Kennerly will read her thoughts on this work. So let's introduce her. Caroline, come on.
Thank heaven for little girls, they grow up in the most delightful way. Remember Maurice Chevalier? I couldn't help but recall the song when I looked at Joanne Herman's painting. And surely the subject is not just any little girl, but the apple of her grandmother's eye. I will name her Miss Adorable. Miss Adorable presents a charming subject. The young lady is precocious, intense, confident, and happy. On canvas, she sits front and center, and she is larger than any other performer. We readily identify her as contemporary due to her soft brown bobbed hairstyle and casual dress, striped green tank top, navy blue dungaree shorts, and green canvas slip-on shoes. At this young age, like little girls do, she is deeply engrossed in her tea party. The table is set, baby doll rests on her knee, waiting to be fed. Teddy bear sits politely across the table by the delicious ice cream sundae, and a very pleasant chocolate-colored dog lies calmly at girl's feet awaiting a treat. However, a mishap is in the making. We see this because baby is not facing our little girl. Baby's position on the knee is not stable, and the angles for feeding are all wrong. In her attempt to feed baby, we see the little girl trying to invert the natural direction of her hand in order to bring the fork to baby's mouth. Impossible? Yes, but our little girl continues to display an undaunted courage and confidence. How wonderful. And yes, I remember it well. As to the composition, Ms. Herman, the artist, paints theater on canvas. We identify the main character as the young girl who, as said, is the largest figure. The stage is set in a cool garage. See the cement blocks in the upper right. At center, the dramatic black panel highlights our hostess, who importantly sits left of center. Red panels on either side of the black add a note of gaiety, with a tinge of black on the red at the left, keeping the focus on Miss Adorable and her tea party. Linking the colorful abstract background and the Norman Rockwell type characters and stage is a small, neutral, and obscure brown dog. That's it.
Thanks, Caroline. That was great, even the singing. Caroline had a possible conflict today, wasn't positive she could be here, so I asked if any of the other writers would take her place and write something about this painting. Mary Power did it, and I'm so keen on her writing that even though it's a fourth reader, I'm going to ask her to come up and read her piece. Mary?
Thank you. You promised we'd be alone. Bear's nose pushed forward. You promised. Someone has to look after her. The baby doll on Abby's lap rolled out a whimper. Why couldn't Curious George watch her? Last time he used scissors to give her a haircut. Stop stirring that pudding and look at me. She did not move her eyes from the plate. The silence in the room boomed in his head, and he knew. He thrust his jaw upward. He had to speak, to hear his declarations roam the room, to have them settle in her ears as sweet as a wren's song. I have loved you ever since you ate the ribbon from my neck. I was teething. She sat as still as a portrait. What? Am I not good enough? You want a grizzly bear, a black bear, or maybe a polar bear? A dancing Russian bear? Mother says you're ratty and always stained with tea party food. I don't have thumbs, yet you always give me ice cream, which is not so good for my waistline either. He waited and asked, do you stand up for me with your mom? It doesn't matter. She says you are germ-ridden. When I get old enough not to need to sleep with the teddy bear, you're gone. But you like it when we are cheek to cheek. Like now, your cheeks are blushing. He wanted to reach out his paws and take her pale skin in them, letting the smooth of his pad soothe her. He should not have pushed. At least he, and he alone, slept each night next to her on his own pillow. Mommy wants to buy me a puppy. Finally, she looked at him. You know they jump on the bed and chew stuffed animals.
Anybody wants copies of any of these writings, feel free to ask the readers. They very may well have something they can send you. That was spectacular. Joanne, where's Joanne? Looking for a stripe here. I'd like Joanne to come up and talk about this painting a little bit. I understand it's a family treasure. Is that correct? It came down here on FedEx or something?
They traveled down with the painting actually a month ago, and my daughter has been complaining that there's a big hole in the wall, that's missing this painting to get it back as soon as possible.
Tell us about it.
That's Juliet, my granddaughter, and that's Ted, who just got bummed out. And Molly is the dog down below, who is 9 years old now and is a very good friend of Juliet. The little doll in there was just a doll of the moment. It's not one of her best friends. It just happened to be there and she just cuddled it at that time. But she's not really a doll person. But Ted never leaves her side. She's 11 years old now. She's at camp in Maine, and so is Ted. He's been in the washing machine and dryer 1,000 times. He does not have a germ. Leave it to my daughter, there's not a germ on that animal. But Molly does not tear up dogs or any kind of animals that we have in the house. She's very tender, and she's a very large chocolate lab, which everybody really loves. So it's really a family portrait of everybody. The only one that I don't know anything about is that little doll. But otherwise, she was just sitting there one Sunday afternoon, and it was not a good day to be outside, and she started her own little tea party. That little table that's there is actually a table that my older grandchildren drew on. So everybody is really in there in that painting. So it's a treasured picture. And thanks for enjoying it with me. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Okay. Ray, what do you and the dropouts have to say about this picture before we put it away? Okay.
We're going to do a song by John David, who played bass in the Dave Edmunds Band and wrote and produced a lot of music. It's an arrangement done by the Kingsingers. 1, 2, 3.
You are the new day. Lie around me where they fall. fluffy, just needs days in which to be. Love of life means hope for me. Born on a new day. You are the new day.
Somebody emailed me from Delaware and said, is this a one-shot event, or are you going to be doing this again? And I told him the shot was the right word, because if I had to do this again, I'd shoot myself. Anyway, is that it? Okay. Here we go. Is Nancy here?
I saw Jill in the back.
Okay. Is Nancy Sakaduska here? Nancy? Okay, I was afraid you weren't here. All right, Chesapeake Sundown. I meant to ask you how to pronounce your name. I'm going to take a shot at this. By Diane Dubois Mullally. Close? Okay. This is our final picture, and Amy Stewart is going to begin with us.
So I enjoy memoir, and this is inspired a family story in my own life. The day didn't start out as it ended. Large billowy clouds lay close to the horizon as I got dressed after lunch. I pulled on my black dress and zipped it up in the back, noticing that it had grown tighter since the last time I wore it. We hadn't had a funeral in a while in the family. I pondered how long it had been since Granny had died. Maybe it had been over 2 years. The realization came over me that we were starting to lose that generation of family members. Uncle DeCourcy's funeral would take place in less than an hour. My mind went back to the clouds that hung so heavily outside. We all met at the dock at Uncle Len's house. It was a simple ceremony. The local Episcopal minister said a few words, and then my husband, Uncle Dick, Uncle Len, and a few of the cousins took the urn, which held DeCourcy's ashes, and got into the Boston Whaler to head out into the creek. We should have known when the motor hesitated that what was about to unfold would leave us telling this story for generations. The wind picked up, and the creek began to fill with whitecaps. I called out to my husband, "Do you think you should still go out?" He waved me off as the boat sputtered, then began to gain power, taking it away from the dock into the choppy water. Once offshore, the boat slowed to an idle. Then the engine stopped, and the boat bobbed haphazardly in the dark green water. I could see my husband as he removed the lid on the urn and turned it on its side to sprinkle the ashes on the water. Just then, a large gust of wind came, changing the direction of the boat. Instead of the ashes blowing onto the water, they blew into the boat, covering everyone. Uncle Len tried to engage the engine to turn the boat around. No luck. The ashes continued to swirl inside the boat. There were gasps on the shore as we watched in disbelief. Sitting on the porch that evening, we watched the sky turn from gold to pink, marveling at the peace of the sunset, but remembering the chaos of the day. A sailboat struggled to catch the wind in the distance, its sails fluttering in the dying breeze. The storm had gone as quickly as it had come.
All right, let's see who's next. We're going to have Mary again. This is the picture she started out writing on. So we'll call her once again Mary.
You can call me anything you want. I'm ready for dinner. Thank you. Peering through prickled vines which threatened to poke out my eyes, I watch a white sailboat curve around the bend as the mist settles on the river. I'm out here waiting, watching, through the surreal pines, so thick they must have been pasted on the view. The boat heads downstream, the sail luffing in the breeze, which always dies away too calm about midnight. Then the greenhead flies attack. I wonder how many common white sailboats might be involved in this scheme. A private high-stakes poker party, illegal perhaps in itself, certainly a floating parlor for a variety of top guns, the real guys and gals behind city crime, sailing on the lonely arm of the Chesapeake, not too close to the Potomac River of D.C., the Hill, as they like to call it, a perfect location for plotting and planning. The underworld skimming along the sunlit waters in a basic, unadulterated sailboat. I hear the call of evening birds, smell the earthy dust settling on my hair, feel brine pressing my eyelashes, then scratch pine needles off my skin. After I killed the umpteenth mosquito, no repellent allowed, scent carries on the wind, I wondered how they could be so hungry. Them and me. I had eaten a bulb of garlic, which did no good repelling those bloodsuckers. I laughed. I was hunting a different kind of bloodsucker, doing my job, just as those pesky insects were doing theirs. Drops of gray darkness smudged trees into castle walls. What am I doing here when I should be back at the hotel, getting ready to infiltrate those friendly games with overly friendly guys? Checking options. I might need a quick getaway. A gal can't be careful these days, even with an ace up her sleeve.
Okay, we're going to change the order of things now. There should be a third reader, but I'm going to hold off on that and ask Diane to come up and tell us about this Chesapeake Sundown. Diane?
Well, first, I want to thank Mary for inviting me to be a part of this because this is an awesome event and I'm thrilled to be here. So this painting has a connection to Jane and Bill Anderson, and they don't know that. This stand of trees was inspired by the trees across the cove from where they live. And, if you look at them, they probably look familiar now. This was a studio painting. I made up the light, and I made up the way the river goes behind the big stand of trees. I like to have some drama and some quiet in my paintings, and I try to capture the poetry of the scene. So that's what I was working on here. I also purposely used complementary colors to pop the colors, and this painting is actually very vibrant. It's hard to see in this light. I painted it with a palette knife, which means I kind of scrape the paint on, and it has a very interesting texture. So I try to paint what I feel about this region and how much I love living here, and that's what the painting's all about. So thank you very much.
Okay, we have something special for you now. Our final reader is Jordan Stanley, and he's going to read his piece that he wrote for this picture, and he's going to be backed up by the joyful noise of our a cappella choir. Jordan? Where are you?
So we're going to sing this is an Irish piece. It's a song that was written in the mid-50s by Brendan Behan. It's what most Irish music is about, being persecuted by the damn Brits. And it is my own arrangement of this song. A hungry feeling came o'er me stealing, and the mice they were squealing in my prison cell.
And the old triangle, it went jingle, jangle, all along the banks of the Royal Canal.
To begin the morning, the screw was bawling, get up, you bowsy, and clean up yourself.
And the old triangle, it went jingle, jangle, all along the banks of the Royal Canal.
This is the Chesapeake, where water whispers better than meddling children on church pew, where fish and frogs are fluent in the language of the water's ripples, reading them like Braille. We spend our Sundays on boats here. We row boats to keep our torso tight. We are watermen and waterwomen, not by choice but by force. This bay is all we know. Unfortunately, I get seasick easily, but I am a lifetime lover of its convenience still. Here, a crane will put a quarter in the meter of its busy day just to stand at the edge of the lake and shoot the breeze with you. Here is real-life Pokemon Go, where finding a lost turtle is the equivalent to finding a real-life Squirtle. Here is where you go to brainstorm that great idea. These are the sounds you want to hear when life has abused its noise ordinance. This is the scenery you want to see when you're trying to unsee what you just saw. This is the company you want to keep when your trust issues go drifting upshore. Here, if you listen carefully, the beat of Mother Nature's heart. This Chesapeake, the closest thing to shaking Mother Nature's hand. I'm willing to debate that her favorite color is somewhere between blue and green. I'm thinking turquoise or teal. Purple is a bit of a push, but my point is this. Here is grade A premium peace. I promise you won't find it like this anywhere else.
And the old triangle, it went jingle, jangle, all along the banks of the Royal Canal, all along the banks of the Royal Canal.
Well, I'm a pretty tough old broad, but I can feel the tears. There's been some brilliant writing here this afternoon. Some really, really good stuff. Before we put the curtain down, I think we should give a round of applause to Brian and Helen Herman for turning the house over to us. And once more for the artists and the singers and the writers. It was quite an experience.